I don't want to set the world on fire. I just want to start a flame in your heart. The crappy autumn weather continues. This all too brief shaft of sunlight is all too brief in what is turning out to be a very, very dreary November in the UK. It's absolutely wazzing it down, and I've been out in it all day. But never mind, because my big Tiger is in for its first break-in service, and as a courtesy bike, I have picked up this today. A Triumph Bonneville Newchurch, brand spanking new this year. Now, I chose this one because I've always fancied a go on one of these just to see what they're like. Now, I am old enough to remember when all motorbikes used to look like this. Born in the early 70s, I was around when this was pretty much the standard look of all bikes, and Triumph have gone absolutely all out to recapture the look of the late 60s, early 70s in a motorcycle here. Now, I've got to say, it is not my style of bike. This is what I would refer to as a hipster chariot. Now, I'm going to claim coinage on that saying, hipster chariot, because I think I've invented it and no one else has said it before me, so you heard it here first on the Veefour video vlogs channel. But anyway, more about this bike. It is a 865cc parallel twin, fuel injected, and that's about all you're getting for your money on one of these. But that's not to say it's a bad bike, because it isn't. It's very, very nice to ride. But the styling touches just go really straight back to the 70s, from this exposed fender with the standalone light cluster with the chromed accentuations, the faux air-cooled parallel twin that's trying to kid everyone that it's a push rod engine when it's not, it's overhead cam, 4 valves per cylinder, thoroughly modern. And you're not kidding anyone with these faux carburettor fuel injection throttle bodies. This, I don't know why they've done that. Well, they have, just for pure style, and this is why I refer to them as a hipster chariot. And I don't mean that in a sort of hatey, negative way. I respect all subcultures, hipsters nonetheless. But for me, I think it's trying to be something it's not. And it shouldn't pretend to be carburettors, because we don't have carburettors on bikes anymore. Kind of a shame that we don't, because fueling was much smoother in them back in the old days, and modern fuel injection, no matter how refined it is, will never give you a smoother low down ride as carburettors used to do, but that's just the nature of emissions rules and such like. But I don't think you should be cracking on that it's still the 1970s. The only kind of people who are going to ride a bike with faux carburettors are people who have a misty-eyed, nostalgic view of what the 1970s were like, and they weren't that good. Trust me, I was there. But the looks of the bike aside, and it's not for me, I must say, but I can respect anyone who thinks that this is what a bike should look like. You know, it's not a bad thing. If you're into your nostalgia, that's fine. Personally, I like to move with the times. I like bikes to look like modern bikes. You know, I'm 44 years old. I've seen all this before. I don't want to go through it again. But if you weren't there and you want a slice of 1970s, well, bang on right here. But for all that, it's a beautiful looking bike in itself, and for all my negativity on the look of it, it's not a bad bike at all. But it's just little things like this. I mean, trying to fool everyone that it has a choke to start the engine. It's just a fast idle, but it's something you've got to do instead of the bike doing it naturally for itself, like all modern bikes do these days. You know, and why put that on? Just you know, it serves no purpose other than something that you have to do to start the bike when it's cold, when every other fuel injected bike does it automatically for you. But anyway, that aside, I won't dwell too much. Nice exposed dual twin shocks, which I actually think is a nice look in a bike of any era or age. I think the exposed twin shocks has always been a good look, classic look. But let's take him for a ride. Now, I've never been a big fan of the parallel twin engine over the course of my biking career. I've always found it to be a bit of a noisy, rattly engine. But this one sounds lovely. It's got a nice deep exhaust note. It doesn't quite have that raw-T sound of the Thruxton because it's got I think it's got a different ignition setting. I mean, this is a 360 degree, whereas I think the Thruxton's a 270, which gives it a more aggressive sound. But anyway, I digress. Now, this bike to me feels tiny compared to what I've been riding recently, but the moment I started riding it, I was straight back to my boyhood, in my late teens, when I was riding things like the CB250 Super Dream by Honda, and it feels very similar to that, but probably actually feels smaller. It is a very small bike, at least for me anyway. But this parallel twin engine is very well balanced and it's super smooth at low speeds. It's really quite pleasant. Again, I apologise if you can't hear me very well. It's very windy today. This 865 motor's got, I think it's 68 horsepower and about 50 newton meters of torque, which is plenty for this bike. It doesn't need any more than that. It puts it into that nice, relaxed, pleasant power sort of delivery where you're not having your arms ripped out your sockets, but neither does it hold you back. It's got enough torque to roll on from a low gear, and it'll pick up just like any motorbike will. Yes, it's a very smooth and very pleasant ride, this. I've always quite fancied riding one of these because I imagine maybe in another 10, 15, 20 years time, when I may be getting a little bit fed up with riding powerful bikes that you've got to be on the ball with all the time, something of this kind of power would actually appeal to me because it's a very relaxed riding bike. You can just put it in a high gear and it'll just pull away nicely, burble away underneath you with no mess, no trouble, and it's a lovely little riding bike. I quite enjoy it. It's very nice. In my ideal garage I would have one of these as one of my many bikes. I'd have it as a kind of little run around, as if I was going into town or something, because it's brilliant for filtering and nipping in and out of traffic, because it is quite nippy, you know. It's a little light short wheelbase bike. The suspension is really nice. It's soft but not too soft, so it will actually do a good job of handling, but it does absorb the bumps quite well, but doesn't bounce around and wallow. I think Triumph have done a good job of setting this bike up. It's a smashing little bike handling wise, and it's very comfortable to sit on as well. It's a very neutral seating position. It's almost as if you're sat in a chair in a sort of where your body would naturally sit if there was no force exerted on it. It's got a nice big long old school bench seat that's really soft and comfy. In fact it's lovely comfy, the seat. It feels more comfortable than my Triumph Tiger seat. It's certainly a lot more comfortable than my Aprilia Tuono seat. And your hands are at a nice level, they're just a nice distance away from you. And there's nice little touches like the both levers, brake and clutch, are adjustable. And there's nothing on the bike to distract you whatsoever. What you've got is what you can see. There are no extraneous switches, there's no rider modes, there's not even any, well in fact is there any anti-lock brakes on this? Oh, no. No, there is no anti-lock brakes on this bike. Nice little bit of a lock-up on the rear wheel there. So yeah, so it's a very simple one dial binnacle with an old school mechanical speedometer, no tachometer on it. You've just got your odometer with two switchable trip meters, so you can set 2 trip meters and it'll tell you the time. That's all it's got. Trip 1, trip 2, the time, back to odometer. That's it, nothing. But then you don't need anything else really when you think about it. Everything except for that is a bit of a luxury. And I quite like it for that, because it does take me back to when motorbiking was a bit of a pioneer pastime. You know, you were just a man on his own on a bike, and it's back to that again, and I do like it for that, I really do. Like I say, it will appeal more to people who are trying to reclaim that kind of era of motorcycling. I just don't think you should model a bike on it. You don't need to model a bike on it. You can just take all the crap off a bike you don't need and charge less for it. Now on that, this is where I think this bike is let down by its price. I mean, they're like £8,000 these, I think, or probably even a bit more for the special edition that this one is. And you're not getting anything extra for your money. It's just all the things that you would normally get on a modern fuel injected motorcycle are just completely absent from this bike. Like I say, not even got any anti-lock brakes on it. So for that same money you could be looking at something like a Yamaha MT-09, you know, and that is just so much more than this bike is. So I don't know, it's I think basically you're paying a little bit for the kitsch value of the bike, and people are willing to pay the money for it just to have that little slice of retro British memorabilia. And I believe this bike is called the Newchurch because it is in homage to a town in Austria called Newkirchen, which one day a year changes its name to the English spelling of the name and pronunciation of the name, because they have some kind of one day a year they have this day where they celebrate Britishness for some odd reason, which is jolly nice of them. It's very nice of Austria to do that. And in homage to that, Triumph have named this bike the Newchurch. I think that's about it. The brakes on the bike are adequate. That's not, and I don't mean that in a negative way, I mean it quite good, because it's a single floating caliper, single rotor at the front and similar at the back, and it provides adequate stopping power for the mass of this bike. It's not a sports bike, so it doesn't need triple Brembo monoblocks. And then to be fair, if it had them, it would probably make the bike less enjoyable to ride, because the brakes would be too sharp. Because you're not going to be hitting the brakes at the back of the Dunlop Straight at Donington on this bike. You're going to be slowing down in normal traffic, and in that respect it stops perfectly well. So yeah, and the single disc up front does lend itself to the time of era that it's trying to represent. And that is pretty much it for this bike. It handles well enough, it's comfortable, it's got enough torque and power, and it's if you're into your retro styling, if you're a younger fella or woman who wants to have a bit of a slice of the 1970s England, then this is it. This is your bike. I just don't like the price of it for what you actually get. I think if they sold this bike at £6,000, they would sell bucket loads of them. But maybe they're trying to keep it a bit exclusive, which I don't like that really. And as I called them, Hipster Chariots, and not just this bike, I'm including things like the Ducati Scrambler in that, and other such retro style bikes, and they're all equally as overpriced if you ask me. But other than its styling, I like it, I do. It's a very pleasant bike, it's lovely to ride. And as I said earlier, I just really do like the unhurried pace of it. I like it's only a 5-speed gearbox, long gears, so you can just put it in like 4th gear. In fact, let's try it now. That's in 5th gear, 30 miles an hour, and it just seamlessly pulls. It just pulls you up to 50 miles an hour, not a problem. And then fueling wise, and I mentioned earlier about the carburettors that we used to have on bikes in the days of yore, and how much smoother the sort of that they were at low speeds. The fueling on this, let's get it back to 30 miles an hour. There's no gear indicator, so I think I'm in 3rd. The fueling feels really good. I can't discern any hunting or surging. It's just plodding away nicely. Yeah, so good job, Triumph, on the setup of this bike. Like all two-wheeled machines, it leaves everyone else at the traffic light standing, so it's all good. No, like it, I do, I really do. Would I buy one? Not at the price they are, and the second-hand value of them seems to hold as well, and it would annoy me paying it'd annoy me paying sort of £6,000 for a 2-year-old bike that's got absolutely nothing on it other than the absolute bare minimum essentials. So there you have it, the 2015 Triumph Bonneville Newchurch. A slice of 1970s retro at 2015 quality and at about 2020 price. But for all that, if you want to spend the money, go and buy one. I don't think you'd be disappointed. If you've got a taste for the era, then this pretty much embodies it, except it's reliable, which they weren't back in the 1970s. So it's all the good without the bad. Well, I'm just off back to Ewell's Triumph in Salford to go and pick my Triumph Tiger Explorer up from its first service. And as always, kids, try and keep your bike shiny side up, especially if in the UK at the minute with this atrocious weather. But keep riding, and I will speak to you later. Toodle Pipski.